Today's Ojibwe grammar lesson will be going over be-form suffixes. So what is be-form? Be-form is also known as conjunct order. Be-form is used in subordinate clauses of complex sentences, and they usually can't stand alone. You could combine be-form with an A-form clause to make a complete sentence. For example, if you want to say, "When I see my sweetheart, I start to get excited," you'd say, "Wabamag au ninimoshe nindani jikandam." Notice the difference when you have an A-form verb. When you use A-form, the verb will have a prefix attached, and when you use B-form, you'll have a suffix attached to the verb instead. B-form sentences will use suffixes. So unlike A-form, where we attached a prefix to the verb, B-form will use a suffix at the end of a word instead. VTIs, VTAs, VIIs, VAIs, and VAI plus O can all be used with B-form. B-form, like I previously mentioned, adds when, if, as, or that to the verb. So for example, babamademoyan, when, if, as I go around crying. Instead of going around he or she goes about crying, you're adding when, if, or as I go around crying when you use the be-form. But remember, this usually isn't a complete sentence by itself. So a VTA is like verb him or her. So remember that a VTA means that an animate is verbing animate. Right now we're just going to talk about positive uses, not negation. So in the next slide, we're going to talk about the VTAs, conjugating them in B-form. In a VTA, the ways that you can conjugate them will be you to me, I to you, I to him, her, them, she to me, they to me, you to him, her, them, she, they to you. So we're going to go over some really simple ones, and maybe later we'll get a little more complex. For the VTA Baba Ma'aj, to keep tracking him or her along, keep following his or her trail along. To conjugate for you to me, you're going to add the suffix yan, Baba Ma'ajian. When you keep tracking me, for I to you, it'll change to Baba Ma'ananan. When I keep tracking you, for I to him or her, Baba Ma'anug. When I keep tracking her. For I to them, Baba Ma'anagwa. When I keep tracking them. For she to me, Baba Ma'ajid. When she keeps tracking me. For they to me, Baba Ma'ajawad. For you to him or her, it'll conjugate to Baba Ma'anud. When you keep tracking him or her. For you to them, Baba Ma'anadwa. When you keep tracking them. For she to you, Baba Ma'anik. For they to you, Baba Ma'anikwa. When they keep tracking you. So now you can test yourself and press pause on the video. You can write down or say your answers. How would you conjugate the following verb? Madabiwidamau. To take or carry it down to the shore for him or her. Practice each of the following conjugations. You to me, I to you, I to him or her or them, he or she to me, they to me, you to him or her or them, she to they to you. See if you can do all of them. When conjugating the VTA madabi with demau into B form, you to me would be madabi with demau wiyan. I to you would be madabi with demunan. The ow drops and changes to un. I to him or her would be madabi with demau wug. I to them, madabi with demau wagwa. She to me would be madabi with demau wid. They to me, the suffix would be iwad. Madabi with demau wiwad. You to him or her would be, the suffix for that would be ud. Madabi with demau would. For you to them, adwa. Madabi with demau wadwa. And last but not least, she to you would be ik, but in this case it will change to uk. Madabi with demuk. And for they to you, madabi with demukwa. Now for the VAIs. So he or she is verbing, they're doing something, he or she does something, or he or she is something. So for I, the suffix on the verb would be on or yan. For you, it would be un or yun. For he or she, it would be d, and they would be wad. Okay, so the verb we're going to use to demonstrate the VAI is gabakage. He or she passes people. So if you want to say when, as, or if I pass people, you'd say gabakage yan. When I pass people. If you want to say when, as, or if you pass people, you'd say gabikage yan. When you pass people. For he or she, you'd say gabikaged. When she passes people. For they, you'd say gabikagewad. So that could mean if they pass people, or when they pass people. Now pause the video and practice conjugating the VAI verb in B form, babichi. He or she puts on his or her moccasins or shoes. The answers for babichi, the VAI, he or she puts on his or her moccasins or shoes are, for the first one, I, babichian, when I put on my moccasins or shoes. The next one for you, babichian, when or as you put on your moccasins or shoes. For he or she, babichid, when that he or she puts on his or her moccasins or shoes. And for they, babichiwad, when that as they put on their moccasins or shoes. Now we're going to talk about VIIs. A VII means that it is verbing, it is doing or doing something to it. For example, it is cold, it is hot, it is hard, it is soft, etc. People aren't involved unless there's a fourth thing in relationship to him or her, which we'll go over later. So remember that a VII is it is verbing, or it is something, or it verbs. The suffixes in the VII will change according to what letters are at the end of the word. So ud will change to uk, will change to ag, k will change to keg, will change to ung, inne will change to inig. So you could say for ashkipogwood, that one would change to ashkipogwuk. So that would change from it tastes raw to when it tastes raw, or if or as it tastes raw. And then for the word adite baga, that would change to adite bagag when there are colored leaves. Bazagoke would change to bazagokeg when, if, or as it sticks. The word agwayaan would change to agwayaang. So instead of it drifts ashore on the waves, that would be when it drifts ashore on the waves, or as it drifts ashore, or if it drifts ashore on the waves. And then the last one, zunganine. Fourth thing is solid. That would change from zunganine to zunganinig when that fourth thing is solid. Now, if you want to, you can press pause and try conjugating the following VIIs. Bagakitagwud, aya, agoke, akiwan, zunganene. The following are the answers from the previous slide. Bagagitagwud, when it is heard clearly or understood clearly. Ayag, when, if, as it is at a certain place. Agokek, when, if, as it sticks on or adheres. Akiwang, when, if, as it is the earth, it is land. Zunganinik, when that fourth thing is solid. Now we're talking about VTIs. A VTI means verbit, like wabandun means look at it. Remember how we talked about A form? You add the prefix. So if you want to say I see it, you'd say newabandan. Or if you want to say you see it, gewabandan. And then if you want to say she sees it, owabandan. But if you're going to use B form and you want to say when I see it, then you would say wabandaman. And then if you wanted to use B form to say when you see it, you'd say wabandamun. And if you want to say when or if he or she sees it for ween, you'd say wabandung. Notice how in the sentence below here, the N in the verb changes to an M and on is added to the end. So the verb we're conjugating, gashkigwadan, sow it, we want to say when I sow it. So that would be gashkigwadaman, when I sow. Mujagiko newawa negwaz. I always make a mistake. Notice the ne wawa negwaz, the prefix on the A form part of that sentence. I always make a mistake. Then you can read the next two sentence examples and see how there's conjugation there. Now you can try it and press pause if you want. You can write them down or you can say them out loud and conjugate the following verbs into first, second, and third person. Minukan, zikapidan, bidun, atun, webaan. The answers for the previous slide are nin, minokaman, gin minokaman, ween minokung. Nin, zikapidaman, gin zikapidaman, ween zikapidung. Nin, biduyan, gin biduyan, ween bidud. Nin, atuyan, gin atuyan, ween atud. Nin, weba aman, gin weba aman, ween weba ang. At the beginning of the video, we mentioned that be form usually isn't used as a standalone sentence, but sometimes there are exceptions. So I guess what that means is, like, sometimes the speaker will use be form in a standalone statement that's happening in the moment, or if the moment of time is being spoken about, so you might hear it from time to time. And again, migo bajinag, wejibwe moyan, indinwazigoji, guaiko eyan, migwich bizendawyeg.